Okay, everyone. We're going to get started here. We've got a few folks already on the list right now, and as tends to go with these webinars, folks trickle in over time, perhaps grabbing a sandwich, depending on what time zone you're in. My name is David Fleming. I'm the Research and Education Manager with Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada. If you're not familiar with that organization in Canada, Cooperatives and Mutual Canada is the national apex organization for cooperatives and mutuals. We work in partnership with our members and a variety of stakeholders throughout the country to advance the cooperative sector in Canada. I'm relatively new to the position. I guess I could probably stop saying that now, in that I've been around for about 4 months. I took over from someone by the name of Aaron Hancock, if that is a name that you know. This is my first webinar hosting. Thankfully, my partner in crime, Catherine Kitching, who is the academic coordinator for the Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network, has been around for a few of these. So we'll kind of find our way through this. The webinar is scheduled for an hour, and we may, we were originally going to do one setup. However, we had one of our researchers unfortunately get sick over the weekend, and as everyone knows, trying to present while you're sick is no fun at all. So unfortunately, Samira Nuhanovic is not going to be with us today, but we've got two great young researchers with us. Just kind of for anybody who hasn't used the GoToWebinar functionality before, there are two functions we're going to be using today. We won't be using polls or the written chat or any of those functions. The two key functions for anyone who has logged in right now, it looks like everybody's currently on mute. To mute and unmute yourself, it's the little microphone button. And the second button that you'll be looking for, which will be around sort of the question and answer period, is a little hand. If you click that, it lets us organizers know that you have a question, and we would be happy to kind of cover questions in order.
Sorry, can I just interject, David?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, we are using the chat window, just not the question and answer box,
Right.
Which I hope has been disappeared anyhow. And we also have automatically muted all of you, so if you're trying to unmute yourself and it doesn't work right now, it will work later.
And that would be great, Catherine, right there. Thank you, Catherine. So one of the best practices with this here, if you're on a laptop particularly, if you are having audio issues, headphones tend to be best, particularly if you have a mic and a headphone together in the laptop. It tends to create a bit of a feedback. If you're having issues with the online audio, which can tend to happen depending on how strong your wireless or wired signal is, under the audio section in your control panel, there's an option to use telephone. For this webinar, we've actually added a 1-800 number, which is available in the US and in Canada. So, and then there are dial-in, which would be toll numbers in a variety of other countries. So we've tried to do that in an attempt to sort of create some flexibility with how folks connect, and if you're having any issues, so that you don't lose any webinar content. Give you just a little bit of a background around the webinar series and what we're doing here. This is part of a Community University Research Alliance project that's happening in Canada called the Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network. It's been a 5-year project. We're in year 5, now focused heavily on dissemination and final products from this. And it's been a partnership between the sector and academic clusters throughout the country, looking to provide tools and to advance the knowledge of the cooperative difference and how we actually measure and talk about the cooperative difference as well. And so this webinar series, there's been a couple of dozen webinars to date. It has been really focused on that dissemination and sharing of information and creating good conversations around key issues in the cooperative sector. This one in particular actually adheres quite strongly to the funding body who's provided funding for this overall project, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council in Canada. It's a national agency that provides funding for social sciences and humanities. And particularly in this project, one of the key outcomes was around building capacity for youth and for emerging researchers. And so this webinar actually really strongly helps to sort of provide an opportunity to share for emerging researchers. today's speakers, we had a third, but we've got two great ones left here who are fully healthy and ready to go. And I'll let them sort of introduce themselves. The way the format's going to work today, we're going to have Andrius speak first. He'll introduce himself, and he will also then take questions afterwards. And then Justin will do his presentation and take questions. And then depending on what time we have left at the end, there may be kind of an opportunity for some more discussion as well. I'm going to look to aim for about an hour with the presentation. So barring anything that you have, Catherine, to say? I think, okay, let's get going. Andrius, we'll kind of get you to go first. And I apologize, I had the order backwards here. So I'm going to just kind of switch the screen over to Andrius, and we will kind of get started with his presentation.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrius Ragainis. So first of all, I would like to thank Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network for providing a platform for emerging researchers like myself to present our research. I think it's a great opportunity to learn from each other. So as I mentioned, I'm Andrius Ragainis, and I'm a Master's in Environmental Studies student at York University. I've also done the bachelor degree in environmental studies at York University, focusing on environmental politics. So broadly speaking, my research focuses on cooperatives, democracy, and sustainability. But today I will talk to you more specifically about my more specific research that I'm about to conduct that focuses on social accounting and cooperatives. So here's the agenda for today. I will go over the definitions of key terms, talk about the main problem that my research is intended to address, the importance of the research, description, potential obstacles for social accounting, examples of social accounting systems, and some sample survey questions. So what is social accounting? Many of you may be familiar with the term, but for those who don't know, it's a range of efforts to systematically track and report on social and environmental performance. It usually results in different reports that are called a variety of names, such as accountability reports, sustainability reports, social audit reports. What they all have, they all basically mean the same thing. The terms are interchangeable, and social accounting itself also includes a variety of alternative accounting models under that as well, and they could be called expanded value added accounting, environmental accounting, or sustainability accounting. And again, as with the reports, these terms could be used interchangeably. But the second definition of social accounting sort of sums up what they all mean, which is basically a type of accounting that expands the range of criteria taken into consideration when measuring performance in the context of an organization's environment, both social and natural, and it typically highlights economic, social, and environmental factors, and is intended for a broad audience. So what I like about this definition over the first one is that it mentions the three aspects of sustainability rather than leaving out the economic part. So moving on to the problem that I'm trying to address, that I see in my research. So basically, it seems that cooperatives are hesitant to implement social accounting, even though social accounting is quite apt for them. So I've come across, well, this is part of what I found in the literature, that cooperatives are quite slow to adopt social accounting, except for some notable exceptions, such as Van City, the Co-operators, Mountain Equipment Co-op, and Desjardins, I believe. So even though social mission is the core tenet of the cooperative organization, um, so because of that, social accounting is quite apt for co-ops. And social accounting is a better fit for cooperatives' core goals than the corporate goals. So the question arises: why is social accounting not as widely adopted as perhaps in corporate sphere? The second issue, so the second part of the problem is the reasons for a low implementation are not well researched. As well, the motivations and expectations for implementation are not well researched. And finally, cooperatives can drift away from the cooperative principles. I've come across this concern in the literature that some cooperative leaders and researchers have, and without social accounting, it is difficult to demonstrate or understand the successes and failures in operationalizing the cooperative principles. So I think it is important to identify the reasons and the obstacles for the low implementation of social accounting. So continuing on that note, the importance of my research is that it may introduce some cooperatives to the social accounting concept for those who are not aware about it as much about it, including the risks and opportunities of social accounting, costs and benefits. It also may encourage cooperatives to enhance accountability to stakeholders. You know, some stakeholders within the cooperative movement would like to have more accountability from the cooperatives, especially the larger ones. So the results of my survey, of my research, may encourage some co-ops to start doing social accounting. Another part of this is that it may help us learn about possible problems with social accounting systems. This problem is identified, well, there are some shortcomings identified with social accounting systems that are out there, and there are many. So the most widely used systems work well for do not work well for small organizations and are limited in their applicability to nonprofits. Most of them do not capture the cooperative difference. So it would be a useful thing to learn about possible problems with social accounting systems. Another value of that is then cooperatives who are thinking about starting to do it, to implement it, may learn about which systems may be more appropriate for them, and yeah, save time and money that way. And last part is they could see where they stand in relation to other cooperatives. So when the results of my research come out, other cooperatives in Ontario will be able to see how widespread is the implementation, you know, what is the level of experience that cooperatives have with social accounting. So that will be useful as well. So moving to the description of my research, the main goals, as I mentioned, are to find obstacles to social accounting implementation, find the extent of the implementation. I mean, at this point, I am sort of working on an assumption that it's a low level of implementation, partly because basically it may be the case that many co-ops do social accounting, but not necessarily in a formal way, producing public reports on certain metrics. So I think it is a useful thing to find the extent of implementation on whatever level it is, whether it's formal or informal, and whether there are reports or not. Another goal is to learn about different social accounting systems, find the motives for implementation, also to find what is the role of democratic governance in the process of social accounting. For example, what stakeholder groups are involved in deciding what social or environmental or economic indicators should be reported on, or basically what's the relationship between democratic governance and social accounting. How much are members involved in this process? And finally, what works, what doesn't in terms of social accounting. Basically, my survey hopefully will capture things about social accounting that work and don't, that other cooperatives could benefit from. So continuing on description of research, so my secondary research will focus on different social accounting systems. I'll try to identify potential problems myself in terms of difficulties for cooperatives specifically implementing social accounting. But in terms of primary research, the survey that I will send out will be going to all cooperatives in Ontario, and the medium through which I'll distribute will be an electronic survey using Ontario Cooperative Association's contact list. And in terms of timeline, the survey will be sent out in April, and my major paper based on the survey results should be completed by end of July. So I have also thought and found out in the literature and some informal ways, but the potential obstacles to implementing social accounting amongst cooperatives. So one was, not surprisingly, lack of resources and time required to implement. Another one was uncertainty over the demand. This was referring specifically to formal separate reports, like sustainability reports that may be 30 or 50 pages long, covering many dozens of social environmental indicators. So one cooperative manager that I've spoken to said that they're not sure how many people are actually interested in going over these reports. So yeah, the question may be in terms of scale. So they sort of scale down their reporting, and that may be, uncertainty over demand may be one obstacle discouraging cooperatives from implementing. And another one is a lack of knowledge about social accounting and its benefits. Because social accounting is a relatively new field, many people may be wondering what can it do and the benefits it can bring to cooperatives, and whether it's worth the time and precious resources to be allocated for. All right, so right now I will go over a couple of examples of social accounting systems. One is the mainstream one, which is called Global Reporting Initiative. It's one of the most widely used systems globally right now. A few of Canadian cooperatives use this to report on their impacts, namely Desjardins, Vancity, the Cooperators, and MEC. The reports are publicly available. Another point about this system is that it has sector-specific supplements. Over time, the developers of this this initiative realized that it does not fit all types of organizations. So they came up with a nonprofit sector supplement, basically a system tailored more to nonprofits. But there's no supplement for cooperatives in this particular initiative yet. So another thing that this does is it emphasizes materiality, which is basically a process of prioritizing issues that reflect the organization's most significant impacts on stakeholders. So in order to encourage more organizations to report through this initiative, GRI in its newest edition started to put an emphasis on materiality to avoid, requiring organizations to report on everything, because there's so many indicators out there, and organizations are now encouraged to pick the ones that are most relevant for the stakeholders, and however, they have to justify exclusions. So indicators that they say, oh, they're not material or they're not relevant for stakeholders, they have to justify that, why they think it's not relevant, because otherwise this could be abused, and there would be unnecessary exclusions. And final point about this system is that organizations are expected to report beyond the boundaries of the organization itself. So impacts that are happening throughout the supply chain as well, even things that, even activities that the organization does not have direct financial control over, even these impacts have to be considered. So the second system I wanted to briefly go over, which is one that is specifically tailored for cooperative enterprises to take into account the unique nature of cooperative enterprises, is one called Cooperative Sustainability Scorecard, and it was developed by Russ Christensen, who's a cooperative developer in Ontario, based in Ontario. It's tailored to small, medium-sized co-ops, although it can be useful for bigger ones as well, according to Russ. It's affordable and easy to use, and the process requires participation of the membership. Okay, this slide covers just a sample of survey questions that I'm working on right now for the survey. I'll have about 12 questions, and these are some of the most important ones, such as, have you implemented a social accounting system in your cooperative? What shortcomings do you see in the accounting models you chose or considered? What were the motivations for implementing it? What reasons did you have for not implementing it? And finally, did you engage your members when deciding whether and or how to implement it? So this is just a sample, and I'll be working with my research supervisor, JJ McMurtry, to finalize the questionnaire and send it out quite soon. So JJ McMurtry is from York University's Business and Society program. He's an associate professor there, and yeah, he'll be helping me out through the research process. Here are some references, and that's about it for now, and I'm open for any of the questions.
Hi, Andrius. Is Catherine. I just wondered if you could actually bring up on the screen those references again, because they flashed through very quickly.
Sure.
And in the meantime, if anyone in the audience has a question, if you raise your hand, I will unmute you. If nobody can think of a question right away, I believe that David at CMC has one. So
I do.
David,
sure.
would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Andrius, great presentation, and it's a hugely timely thing, especially for us. We've been looking particularly at the reporting measures of our members and also of the sector, and looking at what folks do talk about and what they don't talk about. I had two questions, particularly around, and it may be something that you're either including in your survey or you may have some knowledge of now. for cooperatives and even for other organizations, how do they typically find out about social accounting, and what primers or what easy, kind of the 101 materials are out there for folks to know about? And the second question I had related to it as well was, for organizations that are interested, what types of skill sets or skills of staff are required to sort of implement it?
Okay, so the first part of the question was about, can you remind me briefly?
Yeah, so where do people usually find out about social accounting, and what are the easiest ways for co-ops to be introduced to the subject? Are there folks out there with introductory websites? Are there courses? Like, do you know anything about how folks typically find out about social accounting?
Okay, so I think generally they probably find it out through. Actually, I don't have any research on that. It's just my, I guess. They find out from bigger organizations that report, and they see reports produced or marketing messages from other organizations, or sections on the websites that usually bigger businesses have on their, like donations to charities and all those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So they get some introduction through, I guess, seeing examples of other organizations doing it. In terms of learning about like practical skills of how to do it, well, there are, for example, Russ Christensen, who I mentioned, who developed the Cooperative Sustainability Scorecard. A short description of his scorecard is available on the coopzone.coop website. The link is posted in the references section. So he is a person who, I guess, works in that area and could help cooperatives in Ontario and maybe across Canada to help to teach them, the basics of it. Otherwise, learning, like taking courses, I've looked into them personally, and they're quite expensive a lot of times, and a lot of bigger representatives from bigger businesses go to those, and they're quite pricey. So I could not access them myself, and there are some, I guess you could find some toolkits online. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but there are certain level of skills and knowledge you can learn for free online, searching things.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And I do have a question now from Donna Balkin, who I believe is in Nova Scotia. She would like to know, Andrius, if you'll, as part of your research, will you actually be looking at the content of what these co-ops are reporting, or are you simply going with their answers to the survey questions?
I think one of the questions JJ McMurtry, who's my supervisor, advised me to ask is, if you are reporting, is your report publicly available, and can you provide a link to it? So that will be actually one of the survey questions. But before that, I will go through some secondary research, and I'll try to find out how much publicly accessible information is there. I did some of that myself already, but there seem to be that only big cooperatives report on.
Right.
Yeah.
And Donna actually has added that she and Fiona Duguid are working on a related research project, so perhaps you'll want to get in touch with her. And I can tell you actually that here in the Atlantic cluster of our research network, Elizabeth Hicks and Leslie Brown are looking at cooperative sustainability reports and comparing them to corporate sustainability reports, and cross-comparing the type of content they include and also their metrics. So I'm not sure if you've been in touch with them already.
Not yet, but I've come across that description of their research actually on the Research Network's website. So I will probably get in touch.
Excellent. And I think we have time for one more question before we go on to Justin's presentation. So I'm going to unmute Simon Berge. I hope I pronounced that right. Simon?
Berge. Yeah, hello.
Berge.
Hi there.
Hi. Great presentation, thank you. Very interested in the topic. Some of the things I'm curious about, though, is I know we tend to segregate the co-ops into small, medium, large, as opposed to like sector as well. Will you be looking at the differences in social accounting in terms of the sector the co-op is servicing?
You mean whether they're retail or housing, things like that?
How the food. So my research was on food cooperatives, and I found they have a distinctive focus on the local, obviously, and the social aspect of the food that they provide. Will your social accounting research look into maybe how housing co-ops differ in that respect, or how retail differs in that?
It's an interesting point. In just general sense, I thought that all organizations have, on an abstract sense, have some kind of impacts in society on their stakeholders. So I sort of at this point just lumped them all together and expected to do the survey or send out the survey to everyone. But I think it's a good idea for me to try to make some distinctions and try to understand perhaps the interests of different sectors and how social accounting applies to differently, or
because that could be maybe part of the issue of uptake. Sort of the generic solution for social accounting maybe doesn't fit everybody's needs, maybe.
Yeah, I agree that this might be the case. I'll probably need to consider that for sure.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll just hand it back to David for a second to introduce Justin briefly. Thank you so much, Andrius, and there's more time at the end, hopefully, if people have more questions.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. Yeah, that was really interesting and very relevant, I think, to sort of where the sector is headed right now in terms of a lot of discussions around that. And I will kind of make the point of making the connection as well, Andrius, with Fiona and Donna, as they're working quite heavily with us on their work in this area as well. I'm going to turn the screen over now to Justin Ellerby. A special thank you to Justin on this webinar, in part because Justin actually was one of the key folks who said, hey, why don't we do a emerging researchers webinar? So great idea, put the legwork into actually organizing it, and it now bears fruit. So I'm going to swap over to Justin's screen and let him present his work. And Justin?
And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Oh, I did. Sorry about that. Great. Thank you for the introduction. And David and Kat, thank you so much for instigating this and moving this webinar forward. I'm Justin Ellerby. I'm just here to introduce the Emerging Co-op Researchers Network. It's very much in beta version. As you'll see here, I'm just finishing up my term in Cape Breton University, the MBA in Community Economic Development, and have a background in cooperatives, mostly housing, but also multi-sector development in California, and also in serving on the board of the Canadian Association for Studies in Co-ops. Also like to make special thanks really in terms of this project to my main partners in crime, Sonia Novkovich and Aaron Hancock. As well as our worker co-op web host, Electric Embers. Just to briefly frame the project, this started actually when I was attending a symposium at St. Mary's on actually tools for measuring the co-op difference. And I had told Sonia I would really love if there was just a directory, a simple spreadsheet that could help identify and link up students across the world that were studying cooperatives in whatever sector or function or topic. And she said, okay, yeah, there should be one of those. Like, why don't you go do that? So I started to, and you can see how that sort of developed over time. Second really brief anecdote, last summer I was lucky enough to visit Pula, Croatia for the ICA research conference, and it was great, met lots of great folks. But like most conferences, I did not go there knowing ahead of time who would be there really. Even if I saw their names, I didn't know what their research interests were, and especially if they weren't established already, there would be no way to look that up. So you end up just sort of not getting, you never get to meet everyone you want to meet or go to all the presentations you want to go to. And so I'm sure that I missed out on some opportunities like that. Again, just like with almost any conference. And then I did find one person that was studying a topic very, very close to my own thesis research, and was really excited. And we had some really warm exchanges. And then in the subsequent months, we sort of dropped off communication. There were occasional notes about encouragement. We shared a few references and stuff. But email was not a great medium to have a substantive intellectual exchange that would enrich our research. And there's also, of course, a huge behavioral dimension to that. Because while we were both, commiserating with each other about how busy we were and how much we would like to engage more, clearly there might have been other media that we could have worked through that would have been more fun and engaging and accessible to us to do this. So that brings us to the network then. So the constituency for this is obviously academics and students, but it's after a lot of conversations and a preliminary survey that I and Aaron put out before we launched this project, we realized that there's a lot of co-ops that are doing research both internally and outside the sector, and they don't necessarily have a lot of experience with that or with research side. They obviously know their sectors well. And sometimes they want to engage with academia, and sometimes they don't. But sometimes resources could really help and facilitate that process. And then Sarah Pike of the Association of our Cooperative Educators pointed out to me that there's also a growing contingent of independent researchers who are working outside of academic institutions entirely. So this would accommodate them. And at this point, I will take you over to show you the original beta site. So this is the first thing that we whipped up and we got to show off in Pula. And everyone loved the owls, because how can you not love owls? But this here is basically what we were able to use to try to collate information. And when I knew it wasn't really going to work very well or be very attractive. But you can see this is just an embedded Google Docs spreadsheet. If that's as exciting to you as exciting as to me, then you may not see need for what we actually cooked up. So this is still another beta version, but this is an entirely different approach that really engages in the fact that knowledge is socially constructed and people like to have fun while they're doing research. And I should log in, I suppose. Got logged out. So you can see this is basically set up a little bit like a Facebook. And the very front page is like an activity, which is similar to a Facebook news feed. So if we go down here to see all the stuff that I've been doing on here, I'm basically the only member right now. But normally that would, or sorry, once it gets up and running, we have a population of users, then it'll be a lot more active. So the members, and you see here, so that gross spreadsheet that I showed you before has sort of oh, sorry. If I go to my profile here, you can see the original sort of directory that the bare minimum thing that I was trying to have arranged here is represented here. Sorry, this is all looking quite ugly right now. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to work with this platform. I've had some really good technical assistance from David and Kevin Morris as well in that respect. But nonetheless, you get to see at a glance, sort of the CV, and it's like updated, and then the actual CV there formatted, and then contact information. So you can't really put this stuff out on the normal World Wide Web, right? Because bots grab it, and then you're getting emails from mysterious places asking for huge amounts of money. So since this is a private network, you do have the ability to actually go in there and put in information that you wouldn't want public, and only people that are logged into the site will be able to get access to that, and people won't be able to scrape it. So that said, I'll pause for a second here and ask, just like, why do we need another social network? Given the fact that there's already ResearchGate and academia.edu, Mendeley, and the truth is that I found, after investigating those, they're all pretty limited platforms actually for the sort of engagement that people in answering the survey and people that I interviewed said that they really could benefit from. Another thing is we have a tremendous amount of diversity in the co-op movement as a whole in terms of sector, industry, organizational form, scale, ideology, geography, and that's great, but it does create for a very fragmented landscape, and it's hard to get access to resources, funding. It's all just finding these things is very, very difficult. You add onto that the cooperative movement has a huge Google problem, so to speak. If you just Google cooperative, you're much more likely to get cooperative work placement. If you do a Google Scholar search on cooperatives, you're as likely to get hits that are coming from like behavioral psychology, cooperative behavior in that sense. So we really do, this is a field that really doesn't lend itself to Googling very well for initial searches. And lastly, I would argue that because students are inherently transient, we need a resource and a medium that was going to accommodate that transience, as well as the fact that people move between institutions and even between countries between institutions, as myself I've done. So having said that, that's the sort of members. I sort of showed you how that works. And then, again, the activity feed, just to reiterate, it looks like Facebook. Unlike Facebook, it's not curated. So Facebook does a lot of fancy secret algorithms that sort of take the huge pool of stuff and content that could be sent to you and then figures out what it's actually going to show you. We don't have that on this system. Instead, we have groups. And groups is not a great word at all for this. A better word would be nodes. A better word yet might be things that you could have in common with other people. So if we go to the group tree here, again, forgive these tags and the messiness there. But when you look at that, you see, yeah, okay, so we got academic institutions, like, things that are a bunch of people. But also you have things like texts and sectors and legal model structure and even generalizable topics that just exist up in the clouds there. So there's an awful lot of ways that we've arranged that. And these are all nested in a hierarchy. So if we were to go to, for instance, academic institutions, then you can see my current school is there, but so is the ICA Committee on Co-op Research, and we can crack that open again and we get into their Young Scholars Program. Pretty cool. In addition, we have events, and it's easy to reorganize these things too on my end. So one of the cool functions that you can get with these groups is you can plug forums into them. So there is a forum, there's a forum for this group, and someone posted 2 topics in there. So for any of the people that are attending the Young Scholars Program in the ICA in Antalya, they might want to workshop each other's papers, and now Sony or the conference organizers don't need to be sending out a million little email blasts that are going to get lost and maybe not responded to for people who are trying to connect to each other just to workshop each other's papers in a sort of collaborative way, or having places to stay in Antalya, maybe at a hostel or something together as a group. That can be coordinated, and that's just really logistical, but you can get a sense of how that could be pretty neat, potentially, for building up support and conviviality and then actual functional collaboration both before, during, and after the conference. Let's see. So one more example here of the function. So under text, we've got articles, and then collaborative documents. So if I pop into there, you'll also see any group can also have documents attached to it. So again, each group is like its own little page, right? And if we go in there, and we see that someone has uploaded 2 documents, and I'll just crack open this one, and lo and behold, yes, excellent. Lo and behold, it comes up as a, oh, sorry, it still has to be opened up through Word. But these are basically notes now towards cooperative epistemology, which was an idea that I heard very briefly about at a conference a long time ago, and then didn't get to follow up with the people. But they were saying, hey, what if co-ops were not just an object of study? What if they were also a means of study? And do you think that they constitute a way of knowing? And that may sound abstract, but if any of you are familiar with the work of J.K. Gibson Graham, that's 2 scholars that published under a single name. And in doing so, I would argue that they were able to get access to a different sort of participatory process than they would have had they just been publishing as 2 co-authors. And that could have relevance for funding streams and other sorts of things as well. So lots of opportunities there. Okay. All that said, I should also mention, sorry, that there's, unlike Facebook, we beat them in one important way, which is there is a search that is actually global for all the items. So in Facebook search, you can only find people and groups, but anything in there is going to be any content of posts you're not going to have access to. This will do that. So if you read something if you read something and then weeks later you want to actually follow up with it, you think, oh, that actually just is relevant to me, but I can only remember this one weird word that they use in that post, then that'll bring it up for you, which is pretty great. And then another cool feature is there's a plugin here called Transposh, and it's translation software. But basically, it kind of poorly puts in, right now poorly, translations for words that are embedded within the documents. But the cool part then is you can go down to Edit Translation, and any user that may see that a word isn't actually properly translated can hit that, and then all these orange boxes will yield a little box, so then you can put in a correct translation. So the default, when it's working correctly, is it just draws off of Google Translate, but we all know how well that works sometimes. So that's an alternative there. Okay, so just to sort of finish up and get a little bit more speculative, there's a lot of other possible functions that we could be working with this. Right now, the horizontal links between groups should be served by tags. It's not working out super great yet. There's ways to fix that, though, I know. But looking further ahead, a little bit less technical, we heard a little bit of support for having an online journal for students, which could be done under the sort of open source peer review model that people are talking about. There's the ability to do salons. So this can be used to sort of piggyback also off of things like Google Hangouts, Google Docs, different ways that you can get people in real time on same documents or on video exchanging ideas and support. Another idea was course support. So we could have for instance, like there's a lot of programs that are not dedicated to cooperatives, but they'll have one course that's on co-ops. And if that course materials and the discussion forums were built into the site, then people who weren't even taking the course or people who were interested in that information long after the course had passed could still engage. And teachers could, professors could be able to bring in ideas for courses and engagement in their courses from folks that were not even in the same country as that academic institution. There's also all kinds of ways we brainstormed about how this could interface with student-run, student-managed cooperatives for sort of a facilitating participatory research. Like I guess Jessica Gordon-Nembhard has been using folks. Sorry, using the wrong word. She's been benefiting from the help of regular non-academic folks in doing some of her archival research on co-ops historically. I have no idea how they have been arranging documents, but this would be another way to do that and sort of engage people in a highly relatable way that might not be all that excited about academic texts most of the time. Live chat feature, mapping, so we actually get people see where they're co-located with. Gamifying it so that more participation earned points and badges and junk like that. There's a lot of different ways this could go. So where we go from here at this point is, as you can obviously see, this thing is not ready for prime time. That said, we are at the point in 3 weeks after I finish my thesis where we'll definitely be looking for beta testers. And you need a substantial community to do that and sort of build out that hierarchy of groups that I was talking about. So please don't spread the word yet in terms of, hey, everyone run to this site. Because in fact, the address that that site is located at is a temporary address, so you won't even get the right one anyway. But also, when you're launching social media networks, as well as many other sorts of things in life, you don't want to throw it out there before it's actually ready. Because people will generally take one look and then judge based on that first look whether to ever come back again. But if you do know any relatively tech-savvy, engaged students of cooperatives inside academia, outside, who you think might be interested in engaging in this, please have them email me at the address I'll show at the end of the presentation. Once we get that group in, we'll be building out infrastructure and debugging. We'll be collecting interviews with established co-op researchers also as part of generating content. So a big thing for students is not having any idea of like where to go in careers with your co-op knowledge. And just hearing anecdotes from established researchers is really, really helpful. So we'll be having some videoed interviews on those sorts of topics. And then I hope, with luck, that we'll be able to launch this probably in time for the Association for Cooperative Educators Conference in July, and be able to get a lot more engagement there. So that's the time frame, that's the ask, that's the project. And on that note, thanks so much for coming to the webinar, and thanks to Andrius and everyone for helping to populate this. And I'll take your questions now.
That was great timing, Justin. I was just about to jump in and say, let's have some questions. So, does anyone have anything to ask or comment on with this incredible online system? You can send a chat to me, or you can raise your hand. I just wanted to share in the meantime that we had someone who was on the webinar write in to Andrius via email and say that he's going to share some background information on the first ever housing co-op social audit, which was the Woodsworth Co-op in Toronto, and some of the first credit union social audits back in the 1990s. So that's a nice connection that was made. Anyone have any questions for Justin or more for Andrius, or want to share something they're doing that's similar? Aha, Simon again. Simon Berge?
Yes, hello. Yeah, I was just wondering, Justin, how do you think you're going to sort of promote this network sort of outside co-op circles to those who are, on the fringes kind of thing of co-op research?
Give me an example of a person on the fringes that you're thinking of.
Well, perhaps even myself. So I'm at the University of Guelph, but I'm actually in finished the rural studies program. So I sort of, struggled my way into the co-op research area of things by myself, sort of stumbling along. Would there be any way of assisting like universities that have programs that are co-op related but not necessarily focused strictly on co-ops?
That's a great. Okay, now I get you. That's a great question. And to be honest, actually, this network really is mostly for. If I had to say there was one main constituency, it would be exactly that one. Is folks who are in like myself as well. I'm one of the only people in my program that is, aware of the students in my program that's aware of what cooperatives are about. And I have no one to play with in my co-op sandbox. So. It's a really good question. I mean, there are certainly some departments that are more amenable than others. So yeah, rural studies, rural development, international agricultural development. And we can put those feelers out. The truth is, it will be tricky, and that's an excellent question.
A good place to start might be even the business schools, to get them at least, introduced to what co-ops are as a business model. That might be a way to begin.
Right. And again, there's the I think the business schools are probably some of the academic programs that are most likely to be aware of cooperatives, just in terms of studying structures. I could be wrong on that, but definitely there's like Samira. I think her program is in agricultural economics.
Yeah.
So that's really who we're trying to get for, and it's overcoming that fragmentation. I would say is a sort of back and forth process where now that we have Samira, now she can tap into people in her program and leave a notice. But yeah, making the initial contacts will be tricky.
Yeah, almost like ambassadors, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions, comments, thoughts? I think our friend David, always full of good questions, is going to ask one now.
Yeah, I don't know much, so I always I like to ask a lot of things. I'm wondering, Justin, if you, and this might also be kind of a bit of a call to action for any other attendees who might be on here in the event that you've only gone partway down the line there. Have you looked at the kind of user trends and with respect particularly to emerging researchers and how the tools, even Catherine and I were internally talking about how the difference between even a few years between someone who might be comfortable using a forum versus somebody who likes to use email versus somebody who likes paper copies. Have you looked at research in this area to look at both in academic but also in sort of practitioner researchers, how what folks are using, the tools that they're using are changing? Are you aware of any research out there right now?
I have to assume that there's a ton of research on that topic coming from education studies, especially adult education studies, and all kinds of private sector research that goes into almost every web app. All these things are related in that sort of way. I don't know specifically. I suspect that people overestimate how much younger folks are quote-unquote digital natives. I know among my classmates there's certainly people that insist on using paper and going to paper and feel uncomfortable engaging online. But I would say that that's a minority, and increasingly people are, of course, going to keep on getting more comfortable with relating to folks that they're interacting through video with, or over collaborative documents. And then also it's like in a lot of respects we just don't have the choice because we can't afford to send people to Pula and Antalya from all over the world forever with good coverage. So it's part of the hope too is to sort of add on to the sort of existing modalities of engagement, like in person, paper, all that good tried and true stuff, to be able to sort of piggyback and leverage those sorts of resources and connections into a place where everyone can get access to it for free, even if it's a little bit thinner being online.
Certainly. Great. Thank you. Barring any other, we're at about 1 o'clock here right now. So what we do typically with these, just as a sort of wrap up here, the first thing I think I'll do is thank both Justin and Andrius for taking the time to put together presentations and to kind of present your work. I think it is invaluable, particularly in the cooperative sector, being good cooperators to share the work and the things that we're up to that are in progress in addition to stuff that is already finished. And so I want to thank you both for some really compelling work today. I also, as always, like to thank Catherine for consistently being a co-stick handler for these types of things. I hope for attendees at this webinar that you found it helpful. If you know folks that might have benefited from some of the content here, or you missed part of it and you wanted to catch the other half of it, within the next couple of days, we'll post the webinar and the slides to cooperativedifference.coop, which is our final dissemination website for the Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network. I guess, at this point, just would like to wish you all a great day and a great week. And as we kind of are about to find our way into April, strangely enough, hopefully for those of you that have been dealing with epic weather, I hope the end of that comes soon. Barring anything from Catherine, anything you have to say, Catherine?
No, again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thanks very much to our presenters.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.